in Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. My name is Vincent Pearson, and I'm the founder of the Black Sports Business Academy, where our mission is to enhance the learning experiences and career outcomes for HBCU students who want to work in sports. And I'm joined this evening by my friend, my brother, my partner in this entrepreneurship journey, former NFL player, and now educator and transformational speaker, Jeremiah. What's up, bro?
Man, I'm honored to be here, bro. I mean, this is a long time coming. We're gonna dive into so much, but first and foremost, like Vince mentioned, I am a former NFL athlete and now full-time professional speaker, and just honored to be here. Honored to do this work, and we are currently, as a company, rebranding and restructuring. So Lead Your Lane Consulting is where we have evolved into. This conversation today is going to be a great deal about just evolution and how that plays a part in our mental health and overall well-being. And, Lead Your Lane Consulting is to fill a gap, and that gap, Vince, is we live in an AI-driven world now. We live in a copy and paste world now, and it is harder now than it has been in years prior to just identify, what am I supposed to be doing in this world? Like, what is my value add? And that's what created Lead Your Lane, and we want to support not only young professionals, but entrepreneurs navigate that question of what is my purpose and how can I navigate this world with purpose, for purpose. And I'm just honored that we get to do it at the highest level. And today is an example of that.
It is, and I'm really glad that you shared that, because I'm moved. I'm thinking about like this idea of authenticity and the influence AI is going to have on losing that. But before I get ahead of myself, I want to acknowledge that we sit here as incomplete products.
Yeah,
as men, as fathers, as husbands, as people who are still growing. So this is by no means a conversation where we're like, here's how you fix this thing.
Come on, that's it.
However, we want to create an open space where we can have the dialogue and acknowledge that it's okay to acknowledge mental health. It's okay to recognize shortcomings and opportunities for growth. And we really encourage you to be able to do it in community.
That word,
with men. We're very excited to have, I really hope that there are women who've joined this conversation as well. But to look at the brothers and say you have to find men who you can have this space with. So to start the conversation, I want to first give context to the idea of mental health.
There we go.
Because like many things that people start to pay attention to at a really high level, it's almost the more we talk about it, the less context it starts to receive. Talk about just what is mental health?
For me, mental health is about our emotional well-being. I think for me, how I even, frame it is, first and foremost, understanding that your mindset and your mental health are two completely different things. And I think for me growing up, I confused the two because I thought they were the same thing. You know what I mean? And they're not. If my wife, we had a conversation and she's like, there's a difference between being mad and angry. And I'm like, to me, there is no difference, right? And for some, mindset and mental health, there may not be a difference to that.
Right.
And I want to we have a responsibility today to, if you didn't know, which I didn't at one point, know that, your mindset is more about how you think and your mental health is more about how you are, right? And I see the two as mental health being more circumstance, more environment, and mindset being more of how you respond or how you see yourself in that environment, and that being the difference between the two.
That's really powerful. And I think it's an important concept to grasp and dispel early. Recognizing, again, I'm going to have this conversation through the lens of my work with students quite often.
Okay.
And again, the prevalence of mental health will lead to this idea that I need a mental health break. I need
come on.
a
Let's
mental
talk about
health
it.
day.
Come on, let's talk about it.
But sometimes the
man.
answer is no, you actually need to adjust your mindset. You actually need to show up more present when you're in those moments. It's draining you because you're not trying, you're actually showing up.
Somebody not happy right now.
We 10 minutes into the conversation.
Somebody is not happy because somebody just took a mental health day and instead of them actually taking a mental health day, they were on social media the entire day.
Wow.
So what happened, Vince, is they said, I need a mental health day, not fully understanding what a mental health day is. Mental health, again, environment, what you're experiencing. Mindset is how you are seeing yourself in that and how you are responding. Oftentimes we need a mental health day because the environment in which we work in is an environment that triggers certain emotions that we don't like.
Right.
So we say, I want to take a mental health day. And then we go home and we don't necessarily work on our mindset and mental health.
Right.
We spend that doing things, and now the day is over and we got to go back to work, and we're like, man, I still feel the same way.
I feel the same drained.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and that was me, right?
Yeah.
So hearing you say that just brings me back to those misconceptions, and in no way do I want to offend someone when I use the word ignorance, but in its context of its meaning is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I was extremely ignorant when I thought that me taking a mental health day was the same thing as me actually taking care of my mental health. You know,
That's very powerful.
Yeah,
it's a powerful distinction, and so you're right. We
yeah,
gotta hang that up for a second because we don't want to lose the audience that we have. But it's a powerful distinction, and we're gonna get into some also practical tips on what to do with that mental health day. Right. So let's center men for a moment.
For sure.
And this idea of mental health and why it's so important for us to discuss. So from your perspective, specifically for men, why is it important that we are having these conversations and building this awareness?
Because, again, for me, it's an incredible question. And for me, mental health is about environment for me. Like, therapy has helped me see mental health as, like, you are never going to be in control of the environment oftentimes, right? Like, you can have all the intentions in the world. You can work extremely hard, and you can get accepted into a job that you dislike because of the environment. Now, for me, to answer your question, why mental health is so important for us as men to be in community is because it goes into environment. It is, if I can effectively communicate how I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing to a group of people that value the same thing as me, but also support the same thing as me, it allows me to grow. It allows me to evolve into not who I currently am, but who I need to be. So when I think of marriage, it's extremely important that I'm connected with other married men. Not to say that me being around single men will make me less than. No, they're going to inspire me. They're going to hold me accountable. But there's just certain things that I can explain to a married man about me navigating a difficult season with my wife, or, you know, whatever it may be. And they communicate with not really advice, but a level of understanding, you know? And I think that that's the difference. Where a single person could give me advice the same way a married gentleman could, but sometimes it's not that you need advice. Most men know what they need to do. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of having someone that you can come to with that and not stroke your ego or tell you what, because there are some who only want to put themselves in environments where they can relate to the people. Because if I can relate to you, then that means you're going to tell me what I want to hear. No. Like, as me being around other married men who are doing it the right way, that part.
Important distinction.
Important distinction is to say, yo, Jay, you tripping. Like, I have mentors that when I'm tripping, they're like, nah, Jay, I hear you. I understand why you might feel this way, but this is what you're not seeing. You need to tighten up. You know what I mean? And that's why mental health is so important for me, because, again, mental health, and I'll keep distinguishing this as environment. Being able to communicate with other individuals, specifically men, about my mental health is what puts me in the driver's seat of my environment. You know, and when I find myself in environments that don't represent what I want in life, I can be intentional about removing myself and having the self-awareness to do so.
And you know what, a key to being able to recognize that is understanding identity.
Come on.
And so
that's good.
When we're able to see and recognize the part of ourselves that is not just a husband, but a husband who wants to be an honorable husband.
That's good.
I understand that part of my identity and can recognize when my environment doesn't match.
That's good.
Right. And
That's
now
good.
you're right. I love the idea of like our environment. We can't 100% control the environment.
Right.
But we also have to be accountable for the parts of our environment that we can.
Yes.
Because oftentimes we may find ourselves in situations, and this isn't even specific to relationship. This could be career. This could be education. This could be one of many things where it was our own decisions that led us there.
Yeah.
But talk about identity, like in this whole
Yeah.
conversation of mental health. How does our understanding of perspective and identity impact the conversation?
For me, someone who struggled with their mental health for many years, you know, I think for me, I had to unlearn the utility of therapy. And what I mean by that, Vince, is I saw therapy as a reactive thing. Like something has to be wrong in order for me to get help. Where I now see it, the healed version of me, or the healing version of me, sees therapy as this is something for me to proactively create the environments that I want to be, so that I can help protect my peace and help protect my mental health by being intentional about those environments that I put myself in. And prior to that therapeutic experience, I attached my entire identity to the sport of football.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was this kid growing up, or this little black boy growing up saying I want to go to the NFL. It wasn't that. I was this little black boy growing up in a situation where I watched my mother struggle, and I knew that I wanted the sport of football to help change that. And I think of when I think of so many young men and women who struggle with their identity as it pertains to sport, oftentimes it's not about the league, it's about them wanting to change their situation. And I think for me, there's a responsibility that comes with properly educating young people to understand that even if you don't play a sport, whatever title you aspire to have, whatever bag of money, salary you're working towards, that's what you do. It's not who you are.
Yeah.
And your title, your salary, your responsibility in the office or the organization is what you do, and who you are is what you value. You know, what helps discern your decisions. And there's a distinct difference between who you are and what you do. And I truly believe that when you don't know the difference between who you are and what you do, it leads to having the mindset that you are not good enough.
Yeah.
That your worth is tied to a specific title, when your worth isn't tied to a specific title.
Right.
Your worth is tied to whatever you assign it to be. You know, and I know for myself, as someone who struggled with identity for many years, it evolved from my sport to my title. I thought being a professional athlete, it would solve everything. It didn't. I thought becoming an administrator in a school would solve everything. It didn't. I thought becoming a full-time entrepreneur would solve everything. It didn't. So then I realized I got to figure out what's my lane.
Yeah.
I got to figure out what's the very thing that I was placed on this earth to do. And the moment I made that shift to do that and evolve into that person is the moment I began to create environments that attracted people like you. See, like what people don't know is what attracted us together was the fact that it wasn't an opportunity. It wasn't a title. It was, you are a black man who aspires to be an incredible husband, an incredible father, an incredible servant, and I aspire to do the same thing.
Yeah. That's real.
Therapy got me there. If I would have met you 10 years ago, who knows?
Right.
We may not have connected the way we connected. You know what I mean? So it took a level of me understanding who I am and the difference between what I do, and now having that clarity has helped me protect my mental peace. My mental health.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? By protecting my peace. You know, so there's so much more I could speak to that.
Sure.
But just this very moment is an environment that my mindset created.
Yeah.
Your mindset created.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
And
yeah.
I think acknowledging that and acknowledging the practical piece of it,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a meeting between us and there's a conversation which happens hundreds of thousands of times,
For
right?
sure.
But then there's the follow-up, then there's the alignment, and then like I think through and I remember sharing this with my wife. I've shared this with my homies. Like, our first meeting, virtual, 2-3 years ago, we prayed out of the meeting, and I was like, I have always wanted to do that. I didn't know how to, clear the gap of doing it. And so when that happened, I was like, nah, I'm staying close with this brother for sure.
And that was from someone pouring into me. That was from one of my mentors. Shout out to Dr. Alex Ellis, who he wouldn't let us get off a call without praying over me. Wow. You know what I mean? And that spoke something in me that I said, man. And I don't know what it is about Alpha Man, but
hello,
I got to come home one day. But that's a whole nother story. But
we'll get you there.
It's just something about Yeah, but yeah, brother.
Shout out Dr. Alex. Shout out to the Alphas.
Yeah.
Shout out to 1906.
Right. One time.
So I want to relate some of the highs and lows of career to this conversation.
That's good. That's
right,
good.
because you talked a bit about it, with the title of, professional athlete, the title of administrator. Can you talk about, though, the highs and lows with that, right? Because there is an aspiration and then an achievement that must come, must feel good.
Yeah.
But then there's also, perhaps the element where it also feels empty. So talk a bit about that from your experience.
That's so good, man. And for me, how I frame it is, you have achievement and then you have alignment. I think there are a ton of, we live in a society where like achievement gets praised.
Yeah.
And because achievement gets praised, you want to tell the group chat you got the job, right? Because you know how the group chat is going to affirm you. You want to tell Facebook and social media what you're doing because you want the affirmations of what comes with that.
Absolutely.
Once I evolved out of like, I don't need someone to tell me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't need someone to tell me congratulations. I don't need someone. When people say, why are you so consistent on social media? It is because I use social media as a tool to remind people of what I do. That's it. I do not attach my worth to a post. There's some posts that get 5 likes, but 5,000 people saw it or 10,000 people saw it and got inspired by it. And therapy helped me like disconnect myself from the outputs of the world. And by learning that, it helped me not focus on achievement of a title, a salary, or an engagement, but alignment, right? Like, to me, achievement without alignment drains you.
Yeah.
Because you have individuals who got the job. They told the group chat. They told Facebook. They told LinkedIn. They got the congratulations. They feel really, really good. Then now they got to show up to work on Monday. And then there's this void where they're like, why do I feel like this? It's because you only got the job because you wanted to tell people you got it so that you could get affirmed. And then you become addicted to the affirmation of what society is telling you are and what your worth is without even recognizing it. So for me, I tell people, don't chase achievement, chase alignment. And when you are in alignment, you attract the right opportunities. Like Lead Your Lane is about alignment. Lead Your Lane is about getting people to understand that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it, right? So then how do I figure out what I want to do? You have to understand one of the most important concepts, and that is this. In the world we live in, there are problems that are all around us. And every single human has been assigned to solve a specific problem. And when you can do the work through therapy, through coaching, to see yourself as the solution to a specific problem. Now, I'm not saying that you're supposed to solve everyone's problem.
Right.
I'm saying you find purpose in solving a problem. Well, Jeremiah, how do I find the problem? It probably sits right next to the most traumatic thing that ever happened to you or the thing that brings you the most joy. You may not have had an extremely traumatic experience, but you may have experienced something extremely transformational.
Right.
What you're supposed to be doing, the solution that you are for, is either to your right or your left. And oftentimes people lose sight of this because what's in front of them is comments, likes, subscribers. That's what we chasing.
Right.
And then that becomes the void. And now you have so many people who are in society now who got all these followers, who got all this money, but they're not happy.
Yeah.
Right? So many people that have so much money. We've been in them rooms. We've been in those spaces where you drive this car, you got this in the account, but you're not happy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So now I'm not saying you should be broke and that means you're going to be happy. No, what I'm saying is make sure that if you want to achieve something, that it is in full alignment of who you are and what you want to do. And I think that if you were to say, well, Jeremiah, how would you categorize someone who's out of alignment? It is when what you do and who you are not together.
Yeah.
Right? It is bridging the gap between who you are as a man or a woman and what it is that you want to do, and them meeting in the intersection, and there's alignment. So now your boss, he values that you're a mother. He values that you're a father. She values that you're someone's wife or someone's husband. Mm-hmm. Out of alignment is, man, we don't care about none of that. We need you to get this done by this day, and you making a bag of money.
Right.
But you're not happy because you're out of alignment. You know, so for me, it's really thinking about achievement versus alignment. And I truly believe that if people are listening to this right now, stop chasing achievement and begin working towards alignment.
Yeah. And that resonates a lot. And I think of my own like journey in entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And the moment that you become an entrepreneur, you're right. I can almost remember the feeling of there's this like groundswell of just I'm proud.
Yep.
I'm doing this, right? And don't let the check start coming. And now I'm really doing it. You know, now I'm taking care of my family and putting myself in position to
that part.
And then it slows down, right?
Yeah.
And that's where. And look. It's difficult to make up for that lack, you know, for when it's financial. However, the way that I've built the business, the way that I've done the work, I can always look and see immediately the alignment. I know that I'm connected to my purpose and what I'm doing with BSBA. Every time a student calls me or asks, can we set up a call because I'm struggling with something at work, or I just wanted to let you know I got the job, like, okay, that's my purpose. I know it because I feel it every time it happens.
And it doesn't drain you.
It does.
So,
oh my goodness.
So if we give people who are watching something tangible to take away. All right, Jeremiah, I heard you. Vince, I heard you. Alignment over achievement. Now what? The now what is this? Achievement without alignment drains you, right? So if you achieve something like you having a student that you poured into, that you've invested into, says, yo, Vince, I got the job, but I'm happy. I'm emotionally stable. That doesn't drain you.
Not at all.
That fills up your cup.
I'm ready to go do it again.
And that can keep happening and happening and happening. And that's the nugget, right? Like, I think another way to put it is, and we heard this growing up, you want to do something that doesn't feel like work.
Right.
But some people might say, well, man, that's easier said than done. How do I find the thing that I'm supposed to do that doesn't feel like work and actually make money? Because there are people who are doing it on the side, but they're not really making much money.
Right.
And it goes back to you found a gap in your industry, and you've now created a solution in BSBA to now fill that void. And now by filling that void, you are adding value at the highest level, and you created that. You know what I mean? So like, it's so powerful, man. And I've just been so inspired by just how you show up, you know, for what you do. And just, I mean, listen, man, the first time I got on a call and you were like, yeah, man, we fundraised this and this. And I was like, damn, this is incredible. Like, this brother is doing it. You know what I mean? So I just want to give you your flowers, man.
Appreciate
that. You are doing the work, and it is inspiring.
No, I really appreciate that. And I want to say for our students, our members who are watching, all of y'all are absolutely work. But at the same time,
for sure,
you know,
for sure.
There's so much love that goes into it. And I think back to, you know, and this will kind of be a segue to another question. A big part of what inspired the Academy was one of my aspirational male models.
Okay.
And so Dr. Leon Bay at Virginia State University, he was a professor of mine, but that's probably the smallest role, right? He was the leader of the Sport Management Majors Club where I was a member. And he gave me the tough love that I needed at that time in my life as a college student to develop as a man. Like I can see the boy turned young man, turned man in that time in my life. And so much of it was because of the tough love that Dr. Leon Bay poured into me. And that looked like,
Now, what was your mindset, really quick, just to help people who are watching in terms of going back to mindset and mental health? Like, what was your mindset during that time of your life that led to that tough love? And then break down, let's define tough love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think the mindset going, I mean, you got to think, right? I'm high school graduate going off to college.
Oh, yeah.
I'm smelling myself a
You
little bit, right? I'm him at this time. You can't really tell me too much.
Right.
I think I probably think myself having it more figured out than could ever be true.
Sure.
And I think what I immediately responded to in Dr. Bay was his interactions with me never felt diminishing. They always felt like they were calling me up.
That's good.
It's like, hey, look, I see something in you, and I just want you to meet that.
That's good.
So even when it was frustrating,
That's really good.
I'd leave an interaction thinking, damn, he believed in me though. Like he thought I could.
Right.
And so that's kind of what kept me coming back. And I love the idea of also like breaking down tough love, right? Because
there we go.
It's not, it can be manipulated into something that's, that is diminishing or that comes off as making you feel less than. It was never that. It was always, the love was capitalized. The tough was in small letters. And the love was always very present.
Yeah.
It just couldn't always look or feel like I suggested. Like if I'm not, you gotta think about that, right? As parents, right? When a child isn't meeting their potential, that is my responsibility to support them in doing so. And sometimes it looks like holding your hand, and sometimes it looks like letting you struggle, right? You can't learn to walk unless I let you take those first couple steps
And fall.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that is how it felt. Like Dr. Bay's love in that time in life was teaching me to walk as a man.
Yeah, that's good.
And that was just so life-changing for me. And that's really what we try to impart in the academy. I can't be that for all 150 members that we have, but we can create the space where they may find it in our leadership. They may find it in their peers, or they may just be more inspired to go find it on their campus.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear from you. Like, what did that aspirational male model look like for you coming up, and what influence has it had on how you view manhood today?
Well, one of the things that you said that really, really resonated with me, and I want to spend a little bit more time on, is like really breaking down that term tough love, right? Because oftentimes I'll try my best to effectively communicate that when you're going through tough seasons, right, and you are navigating seasons where your mental health and you sometimes feel like you're off, or it's just one of those seasons where life is lifing, as people would say.
Oh, yeah.
Oftentimes, when things are happening and they come in the form of tough love, I'm not saying put yourself in spaces where people are going to break you down.
Right.
So in taking the time to define tough love, hopefully we can help some people unlearn that term, because there are coaches, educators, parents, even we as peers sometimes can provide tough love, but we forget that tough love there's two phases to it, right? There is a breaking down where some people stop, and then the other phase is building you back up.
Right.
So what I would want to inspire people when thinking about creating the environment or being in an environment where you don't feel psychologically safe, or you don't feel like you are in the right space, here are some tools and things that you can do to help discern who you choose to be around in those environments, but more importantly, how to remove yourself from those environments. And it is tough love should not only come in the form of, I'm going to tell you what's wrong about you. Right?
Absolutely.
So your professor, it wasn't, I'm just going to tell Vince about himself. It was, no, I'm going to tell Vince about himself, give him an opportunity, and then now I'm going to help develop the competencies and the skill sets that he's going to need to become who I see him to be.
Absolutely.
Right? And you were in environments where you were uncomfortable. You were in environments where you received tough love. But there are people who are in environments of tough love, or so they say, and they're being met with criticism.
Right.
As opposed to feedback of, man, you did that wrong. Now here's what we can do to be better. And hopefully someone's watching this and now has a level of understanding of how we've navigated different spaces. Because I think the misconception, Vince, is that we've always been here.
Yeah, oh my
We've
goodness.
always been in the right rooms. We've always been, and like you just shared in your story, we haven't been
At all.
You know what I mean? But being in proximity of leaders, and then there's someone who might be watching that might be like, man, I hear you, Jay, but like, what about the leaders in my life that only tell me what I did wrong and don't take time to tell me what I'm doing right? Well, you have a responsibility to find the rooms that there are people who aspire to do the things that you want or are already doing it, and put yourself in those rooms.
Right.
There's a responsibility that we all have to do that work. Now, will it be uncomfortable to be in those rooms? 100%. And I think that's where people stop, is they get uncomfortable and they say, I don't want to be in those rooms. I'd rather you tell me what I did wrong than tell me what I need to do right.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So for me to now get to the question is, I would say one of the greatest things that my father did for me that provided tough love in a productive way was he put me in martial arts. And my martial arts instructor was the first man that showed me what it is to be a husband and to love on your wife. My martial arts instructor was one of the first men to really, my father spoke life into me, you know. He gave me advice, but this was the first gentleman who was a full-time entrepreneur, you know, who visually showed me things at a really young age that really exposed me to what Jeremiah Brown wanted, you know, and the impact that he wanted to have in this world. And it was through that experience of him holding me accountable, you know, and him having a standard of excellence every single day, that when I was at my lowest, I went back to the training. Like at 6 years old, he's calling me Mr. Brown. So when I don't know who Jeremiah Brown is, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, man, you're Mr. Brown. Like, you're that kid that got a black belt in martial arts. Like, you're that kid that got a scholarship to college. You're that kid that went above and beyond to do these things. And now you have an opportunity to do it again. You know what I mean? And I think that for most people could be helpful.
I love that, because it also brings to surface the positive reinforcement that your environment can contribute.
Huge.
But also the positive reinforcement that you yourself can contribute, right? You know, so much negative self-talk, self-communication can, you know, obviously unconsciously start to just break down and impact your mindset of just even how you see yourself, getting back to identity.
100%.
And it's going to be so difficult to find fulfillment or impact or alignment when you can't even look in the mirror straight, because you've told yourself so many negative things about who you are, how you are. And I want to share, you know, we talked about the highlights of things shared on social and everything else, but we don't always share the lowlights, right? The moments where we experience the low. And I don't mind sharing that one for me was being let go from a job where I was probably in my early 30s. I had just turned 30. And it was the first time in my life at 30 that I experienced what I would consider failure. And to that point, I would, you know, maybe varying degrees, but I would say I was experiencing moderate success throughout. And now I'm faced with failure. And there's no two ways about it, even when the environment is, not your favorite and you feel like you may not be thriving the way you expected to, walking out with, your pink slip and your things, there's no way to paint that in a positive light.
Be traumatic, yeah.
And getting through that for me was very challenging. I was an entrepreneur the next month, and had clients. Business was beginning to roll, but there was still that thing in the back of my mind, in the back of my heart, that was like, yeah, but you failed though.
Yeah.
Like you failed, and that's what brought you here. And good job, but don't forget that you failed. And so, like, I had to get through that. And
That's good.
I give my wife Asia, I give her a lot of credit and how I was able to get through that, because when I couldn't find a positive self-talk for myself, there she was.
Come on. Shout
and
out to the wives.
Shout out to the wives.
Shout out to Julian, man. Y'all.
Especially to any women that took the time to join and decided they want, like, shout out to you in this moment. And Asia, babe, shout out to you as well. But that positive reinforcement was just so necessary for me. And I'm wondering, like, for you, as you look at, obviously adult life now.
Yeah.
Because we're also getting to the core of, like, why aren't men comfortable acknowledging the struggles that we experience, whether it be fatherhood, relationship, career, whatever it is. It's almost like we've been trained to put on the armor and say, I'm good though.
I think again, it really comes down to that environment. I'm very, very fortunate enough to have brothers like you. Shout out to some of the group chats that I'm a part of. There isn't a group chat that I'm a part of where the men in that group chat have not created a space where I can communicate what I'm dealing with. Now sometimes we talk about ball and all of these other things, and we can get into these heated debates, but at the end of the day, I'm very, very fortunate, and I've been intentional. That was intentional by me, right? I could also be in an environment where I'm a part of group chats that don't have a safe space for me to communicate, or brotherhoods or cliques, as they say, where I don't feel safe, and for me, I would say that was always me being intentional. And I think to answer your question on why we don't oftentimes communicate it is because I think when you think about manhood specifically, sometimes manhood could get associated with achievement, which dominance of wealth, dominance of the hierarchy of, like, I drive this car, or I have this job, or I've done this gig, or I've done that, and as opposed to who you are and the value that you're bringing the world. I think that for everyone, it is less about what you achieve in terms of manhood and more about, like, to me, I always say this, like, the realest flex is the amount of people I've impacted in this world. Not the check, not the car, not the crib. Like, how much people have you positively impacted? Like, how have you positively made this world a better place? To me, that's the flex. To me, I only want to move with people that operate in that fashion. And as a result of operating with men like that, they've created a space where I can communicate and say, man, I'm not at my best right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I was in a chat, one of my chats, it was like, man, how you feeling? 1 to 10. I said a 5. I got a phone call. Like, hey, bro,
man,
where I'm from, you give a 5, that means there's something wrong. Talk to me. What's going on? What's on your heart? All right, another man saying, what's on your heart? Creating a space for me to communicate what's on my heart. And then there's some groups where we may not necessarily have that type of relationship. Right. I can't hold that against them.
Right.
It is just, I have the responsibility. We as human beings in this world have a responsibility of choosing who we want to be around. You don't choose your parents, you don't choose your brothers and sisters, but you can choose the people that you choose to be around. You know what I mean? And for me, it's really about being intentional on that.
And I want to say right now, for any young man who's listening who doesn't have that, get in touch with me. And I say that from a very sincere place. I'm not going to pretend to be your best friend. I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers. But if you do not have someone who you feel like cares enough to have that conversation with you, let's get in touch with me, because I promise you that I will.
Same.
And I mean that from a very sincere place, because that is so important, to be able to be vulnerable but then also have the proper response to vulnerability. Like,
And that's a good point, because there are so many people who you're speaking to right now that just don't, they do not have the competency or the skill set to effectively communicate how they're feeling. So it's not that they don't want to, they just have a hard time effectively communicating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's really what happens is I don't think that there's someone in this world that wants to be disrespected. I don't think that we're human beings. Like, we are wired to connect. We are wired to like
Absolutely.
be with. So it is just everyone's perspective and where we come from and how we respond to the circumstances that we're given, I think, is what separates us all. You know? And I think that there's a young man that we're speaking to right now that wants it, but he just doesn't know how.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not know how. And that's why I'm saying to get in touch now with us,
Yeah.
because you don't have to
Absolutely.
know to start.
Absolutely.
And we would love to, be a part of that journey for you. I want to talk about emotions, right?
Okay.
So we talked about vulnerability.
Yeah.
Were there any emotions that you felt like were off limits for you, either in manhood or, in any transitionary stage, that you've come now to understand, like, no, there's actually power in that and being able to express that emotion?
Yeah, so growing up, even when I think of like the term manhood, in my neighborhood, or even just my era of football, like expressing how you feel was a sign of weakness, right? Especially when you didn't feel like this macho or this strong person, but it's like, nah, like I'm really navigating this. Like, it was looked at as a weakness. And for me, I had to unlearn that. Like I'm raising a child, I'm raising a young man who I'm looking at and I'm saying, Jonah, it's okay to cry.
Yeah.
Like, it is okay to cry. What is not okay is for you to sit here with these tears and not look to get past them or get better. But in order to get past it, we have to face it.
Yeah.
We can't run from it, right? We can't just wipe the tears and then just forget about it and say, and as a father, as a man, I want to be able to raise my son and my daughter by saying it is okay for you to communicate how you feel. I actually want to take time to communicate how I'm feeling, right? And then us sit with this and let's navigate this. That is a skill that you have to develop. I think oftentimes the reason why in certain communities we struggle with that communication is because we never take time to develop it.
Yeah.
We oftentimes have expectations that exceeds people's development. I expect you to be able to communicate to me, but you've never had an opportunity to develop those skill sets.
Right.
So me being your brother, I have a responsibility to help support you in creating spaces for you to develop that.
Yeah.
And if you are my brother, you're not going to see it as an attack.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing, where sometimes when we communicate how we feel, we can feel like we're getting attacked.
Yep.
Because like, why do you feel that way? Like, what do you mean? And it's just like, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I have to, even with my friends in real time, I've had to learn, especially in a group chat setting, right? I had to learn, like, that's how he feels. That's okay.
Right.
Right? My brother will always say this, he would be like, two things can be right at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fact, right? Like, I feel how I feel, which is my reality. You feel how you feel. That's your reality. And both of these things are true.
Yeah.
And sitting with that and understanding, like, okay, now that we got past that, now how can we come together and come to a level of understanding?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for me, you have to proactively and in real time build those competencies. I think you have to just be intentional about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I started chuckling a little bit when you shared a story around like the football experience.
Yeah.
And it's partly because I know my mom is listening, and I have a football experience.
Okay.
And I can't remember how old I was. I want to say it was maybe elementary.
Yeah.
Playing football, and I make a mistake on the field. Coach yanks me up. He screams at me, and I just start crying.
Sure.
I'm just, I can't take it. And then my mom, post game, is just asking like, "Babe, what was wrong with you? Why would you start crying?" I said, "Mommy, I got feelings too."
Oh man.
And you know what? It's funny. I can look back and laugh now, but it's like, damn, if it ain't true.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
in that moment, it's because my feelings were hurt. I didn't think that was cool.
Yep.
and all of the reactions that I got in that moment from coach, from players, from even from mom, in a lighter way, because obviously my mom has done so much to help me grow emotionally
Yeah.
and as a man as well.
Absolutely.
But all of the responses that I got in the moment were like, "Stop all that damn crying! Like
Yeah.
that's not okay. That's not what we do here." And so I think recognizing for me that I guess in a way I've always been kind of emotionally advanced
Sure.
because I knew in that moment what was wrong is that I got feelings too and they're hurt right now.
Yeah.
But that being okay.
Yeah.
And also finding the right way to express it, right? Crying outside.
And that's really what it is. Like, tears is an emotional reaction, right? Like,
Right.
I'm crying because something has happened that triggered this emotion that I can no longer control
Contain that, yeah.
physically and mentally, to where now tears are coming down my face. And once therapy helped me see it that way, right? Like, when my father would talk to me, I would just cry. And he would be like, "Man, what you crying for?" Right? And sometimes I see myself doing that to my son, like, "What you crying for?"
Yeah.
But then I catch myself, because therapy helped me realize that when my father would talk to me and I would cry, it was because I loved him so much that I respected every single word that came out of his mouth. And I didn't want him to be disappointed in me. So when I speak to Jonah or my son and or even my daughter, when I raise my voice and they start crying, it is not to make them cry, but it is to let them know, like, hey, like, I'm here. I'm here with you, and when they cry, it's not to just say, okay, go to your room and stop crying. It's like, I have a responsibility there to now teach this skill in my son, teach a skill that I didn't have, or I had to develop and wait years to develop. Is, what are you feeling and why do you feel this way? And me affirm and say, okay, I hear you, I see you, I understand. Now what do you think we can do so that the next time you're met with this, you don't feel this way again?
Right.
And the truth of the matter is, it may happen again and he may feel the same way again.
Yeah.
And me let him know that that is okay.
That's a wrap.
It is just not okay to feel it and dismiss it.
Yeah.
If you're going to feel it and you're going to cry, let's make these tears worth it. Now let's do the work. And it's going to be uncomfortable. And that's the part, right? Where it's going to be uncomfortable. And when I've realized about this mental health conversation, is where I struggled the most with my mental health was because I had the mindset of, I know everything. I had the mindset of, I don't need help. And I had the mindset of, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yep.
And you cannot grow in isolation. You grow in community. And for me, I was committed to doing the work. And when I come across individuals who are struggling with their mental health, it is a direct correlation to them struggling with their mindset. There is a circumstance around them, right? If we break down the word circumstance, circum is circle. There's a circle around individuals. The stance to circumstances, the stance that they choose to take in given environment. So the stance you choose to take in the circle that's around you, meaning the mindset you choose to have to what's happening to you, is the result that you're going to get.
Wow.
If you see this circumstance as, why is this happening to me? It's going to defeat you.
Yeah.
But if I see it as, what am I supposed to learn from this? How is this developing my character? How is this reminding me? When you got released from that job and they gave you the pink slip, that was sent to develop you, because your source knew that there were going to be other Vince Pearsons that were going to go through what you're going through, or they're going to go through the Black Sports Business Academy so that they don't be met with that.
Right.
And now you've created this environment to where now they have the right mindset in it. So I know I can kind of keep going on and on about it, but
but it's good.
This means so much.
It's very good, and I want to be mindful of time.
Yeah.
Because I got so much that I want to get into these last 7 minutes. So the first thing, maybe we'll do a little bit of rapid fire,
Sure.
as much as we can.
Sure.
Because I want to come back to the beginning on practical tips. What do you do with that mental health day? How do you make it count?
That's good. So really quick, the mental health day is I shut it down. Like I'm currently at the Q4, so December and July of every year is when I strategically take time off mentally to hit reset. So what that mental reset is, or that mental health season for me, is like scheduling out all my content. People think I'm more busy than I am because I schedule my content out. I don't go on social media until 3 p.m. every single day. Why? Because if I start my day by reacting to everyone else's reality, then it's going to impact my decision making. I already, as a father, as a husband, as an entrepreneur, I already have a lot of decisions that I got to make. So to help protect my mental health and my mindset, I don't go on social media until my day is almost over.
Can you say that one part? I don't start my, say that part again. There's power in that.
I don't start my day until after I've already, like, I don't start my day on social media, because when I did, I would find myself in a reactive state from the moment I left my bed. And the reactive state is seeing what everyone else is doing and comparing it to what I'm doing. So now I'm shaming myself. Now I feel guilty. Now it's leading to so now I've started the day already at a deficit, because now my mindset is not the right mindset. I'm comparing, which is the thief of joy. And now I've started my day in lack as opposed to abundance.
And I want everybody listening to take an honest assessment and inventory and ask if you're starting your day like that.
100%.
Because I'll be honest with you, today I did.
Yep.
I unintentionally, I'm getting up trying to make sure I got enough time to get to the airport and all these things. But then I found myself on Instagram. And before I know it, I could have started my day 5 minutes ago. Instead, I'm here. Right? It's habitual. I think some of it is saying it out loud that we may be addicted to that.
Yep.
Just the checking in.
Yep.
But oh my goodness, the thought that now you're starting your day by reacting to others' reality. You didn't even check in with yourself.
I'm checking with yourself.
Okay, so there's a lot of power.
There's a lot there.
I'm gonna keep us moving, but
hey, Paul, if we go over, you could charge us. How'd that work?
Right.
You can charge us. I promise. If we go over,
if it's somebody, don't kick us out.
Are you on a hard stop at 7? Okay.
All right. We might.
Okay, cool.
Perfect. Yeah, because I don't know if there's a way.
Paul, if we went 30, could you invoice us? We'll pay before we leave here. Yeah. Cool. All right, so we'll just go for another 30. All right, cool.
I love it. Okay, I love that. So let's do this, because I definitely wanted to incorporate the sports angle.
Yep.
Especially when we talk about young men. You've walked the path that a lot of young men see for themselves, which is hitting that pinnacle of becoming a professional athlete.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of positivity that can come from youth sports.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of toxicity that can come from it. Talk about that from your perspective, just in terms of the impact that athletics can have on young men.
I think one of the biggest impacts that athletic, from a positive standpoint, I'll start with the positive, is that it can be an outlet, but oftentimes that outlet could lead down a not so supportive path, because you now develop this skill set of, you release this tension, you release this the emotions that you're dealing with in your sport. So now when that sport is removed and there's no more touchdowns to score, or there's no more baskets to shoot, you now have this void of, how do I now express my emotions? How do I now express this tension that I'm dealing with? And I think that becomes the downfall of attaching your identity to the sport. I think the positive side is, like, it does get kids off the streets. It does, a lot. It does give a carrot, as my coaches would say, of like something to work towards.
Right.
I think that there's so many. It teaches you sportsmanship. You get leadership opportunities. I think where coaches now have a responsibility is to not assume that the transferable skills from a sport will be transferred automatically.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest misconception. I hear coaches, I hear parents all the time. I got my son in the sport. Oh, football teaches this, basketball teaches this. Yeah, it does. But if you as a coach or as a parent don't take the time to intentionally teach how time management plays a role in what it is that you want to do. Oftentimes my coaches would say things like, oh man, you should be lucky that you're a scholarship athlete. Like, you wake up 4:30 in the morning. The average student's not waking up 4:30. No, don't get it twisted. I have to wake up 4:30 in the morning. If I don't wake up 4:30 in the morning, I'm getting in trouble, right? So now, as an adult, I don't have to wake up 4:30, right?
Right.
So now I have a choice to make. You get what I'm saying? So I needed someone to teach me how to use the transferable skills, and I think that sports, it provides. One of the greatest things of sports is it provides transferable skills. But if these transferable skills are not taught, there's a gap.
There's absolutely a gap, and I think from my own experience, I'll say my basketball career ended at high school.
Yep.
It probably ended a lot sooner than that. But I can remember a big part of why I had this like closed mind and smelling myself in that early college careers is because I had it in my head that somehow I was going to be compensated for playing basketball. Like I was 19 on a D2 campus, not on the basketball team, and still convinced of this. And I think that's the part where it can grab a hold of you and really start to have a detrimental impact, because I always compare it to my wife. She explored so many different careers. She wanted to be the president of BET, and she wanted to be an author, and she wanted to, who knows, let me go to the moon. I wanted to play ball.
Sure.
That was it.
That was it.
I didn't have another aspiration.
That was it.
And so even sometimes in career now, I'm like, what do I want to do in 10 years? Like, and so I think it robs young men sometimes of that exploration of their own interest. And, even athletes, when they finish their playing careers, sometimes come right back to that struggle, right? The ball stops bouncing, and it's like, well, damn, who else am I? What else am I? And I think that's so much of, the work that you do with Legion Lane can fill that gap.
100%.
Because, number one, you've walked it.
100%.
And you walked it with intentionality.
Yep.
But two, you can connect and help see the forest through the trees, so to speak. And I think that's a really important component, not even just for young men. Obviously, we can all benefit from that, but especially for young black men who've attached their identity to this idea of, playing ball at that level, whatever ball might be. So I think that's really important. There was something else I wanted to talk to, and I'm looking now at some of our registration form comments. And someone said they hope to gain clarity as to how I can support my husband and his mental health while I'm working in the sports industry. I love to kind of have you start for us the conversation on what does it look like for the women in our communities to support us, not the version of us that is achieving, right? I'm not asking you to support the career of mine. I'm asking you to support me in this mental health conversation. What does that look like from our partners?
I think one of the biggest things is like listening to understand rather than to respond. I think it starts there, just in terms of like effective communication. I think it starts with just being able to, like, as a man, creating a psychologically safe environment for your woman or wife or significant other to be able to communicate, and you be able to receive it in a way that you're looking to understand what has been communicated rather than be understood. And I think oftentimes when we are navigating the nuances of our mental health and our mindsets and the shifts and the transitions that happen, is I communicate something to my partner and I'm expecting them to understand. If I don't effectively communicate what I'm dealing with, and I don't give them an opportunity, because you can say something to someone and they can hear it completely different.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know what I mean? And there are so many people who struggle at effectively communicating what they're feeling. And as a result, someone on the receiving end has now heard something, and instead of them sitting with it and saying, I don't understand, I need you to break that down a little bit more. What they do is they then respond. And their response is, I hear you, but I'm not really listening to you.
Right.
Because this is how I feel. This is what you did. This is how it made me feel. And I hear you, but I'm not listening to you. Where I've been able to, when people say, yo, Jay, how have you and your wife been able to enter 16 years of being together, married, going on 8? It is, as she's evolved, I've evolved with her. As I've evolved, she's evolved with me. And when we get into these moments of here's how I'm feeling, it is my responsibility to do my best in learning and understanding her perspective.
Yeah.
And then just sit with that. Like, that's your perspective. I don't understand it right now.
Yeah.
I need time to figure out what it is that you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that we don't do enough of that. And I think that just starting there is a way to really help, really support, your partner, is just listen to understand what it is that they're dealing with. And then the last thing I'll say is my wife did an incredible job of reminding me of like who I am, and
Man.
my wife did an incredible job of, when I was navigating these suicidal ideations, she didn't know it, but she knew I was depressed. She knew I was anxious, and I didn't communicate that I had these suicidal ideations until 10 years within our relationship.
Right.
And it caught her by surprise. But I said, babe, like, you were a part of my recovery process because you reminded me of why I belonged here. You provided me a sense of purpose that I didn't even know I had, and she was just supportive with me, during some really, really difficult times. So it really comes down to that communication piece of just really listening to understand, rather than to respond and be understood.
Yeah. And I think that, to build on that, it's, the support is so paramount. And being able to do that in a way that's genuine and do it in a way that is received by your partner, right? If we're having a conversation from the perspective of a husband and a wife, you know your partner, and in moments where, maybe they're quiet, maybe you can kind of start to sense those things. And you got to respond to that. Like, don't sit on your hands when you know that, or when you peep that. Is what I would say, like, for spouses and being able to support men in this journey. Asking the question. And asking it in a way, like, maybe getting beyond, are you okay? Right? Because we've been trained to, we bat that question out of here like it's nothing. I'm good. Finding the right way to ask the question. And so I guess a big part of it is just go on a journey with us. Like, for so many of us, all of the things that I experience today and tomorrow will be for the first time. And the most important thing that I need is my partner with me, experiencing it with me. Mindful of expectations, mindful of how we, push that on to folks, and, recognizing that in relationship that's part of it.
I think you said something there that really reminds me, and if you would have went first, my answer probably would have been a little bit different, only because you said something that is so important. And whoever asked that question, or hopefully this conversation is helping other individuals navigate, supporting their spouses or significant others, is expectations. I think one of the best ways you can support your spouse as they navigate different seasons of their life from a mental health standpoint is understanding that your expectations of me might exceed my development and level of understanding. So one, have you effectively communicated what your expectations of me are? Because if you haven't, we're always going to be in conflict. So one, if you have expectations of your partner to do or to be a certain way, it's your responsibility to effectively communicate that. However, if you have expectations of your partner, but those expectations exceed their ability of understanding and competence, right? My expectation is for you to communicate, but who you just communicated that to has a hard time communicating. So you now have an expectation that has exceeded their development. So what we have to do is we have to understand that if I expect this of you, I also need to be willing to be in the mud with you as you develop this skill.
Can I give a practical example of that?
Absolutely.
I keep saying my wife. We get married at the end of the summer.
Come on, let's get it. Can't wait.
I have been tasked with planning our honeymoon.
Okay.
I am notoriously not the planner.
Come on.
So what does that mean? But it doesn't mean that she steps in and says, "Okay, I'm just gonna do it."
Yeah,
Not for this one. For
Yeah.
for some other
Right.
cases, perhaps, but
Right.
not for this one.
Right.
Instead, she's constantly asking a question. Hey, baby, did we book?
Yeah.
You know, what are we gonna do when we
Yeah,
get there?
yeah.
Like, I'm so excited. Like, where are we gonna go? Like,
Yeah.
they're nudges. They're reminders that, bro, you need to.
For
Did you
sure.
plan it?
For
Because
sure. For
it's
sure.
yours. You said you were
sure.
going to, and but that resonates so much because, and I wanted to offer that practical example because I'm 36 years old, and still living in that moment of I'm still growing. I'm still developing that piece
Forever.
of the husband in me.
Forever, and we forever will, and that's the challenge, and that's the beautiful part of it. Like, everyone wants the outcome of marriage to be this beautiful thing. No, marriage is work. Relationships are work. There are so many people who don't want to evolve, right, because they're afraid of what they're going to lose, and I get it. Like, I've been there, right? But if you want this experience, there's work that comes with that experience. You know what I mean? So for you, having the awareness of I'm 36 and I'm still evolving, that is why you're getting married. That's why you're getting married, bro. That's why you've attracted the person that God designed for you, right? Like, you are in alignment with your significant other because you're evolving, and she's putting you in some uncomfortable situations for you to grow. She's giving you an opportunity to grow, right?
Boy.
Because let's now, and this is a quick pivot, the love language, right? What she has now gifted you. Let's look at it as a gift. She's gifted you with the task of planning the honeymoon, is her giving you an opportunity to express love to her in a way of, we did this together, and now what I love so much about my man is he's a go-getter. And now my man can go get this experience that and I can just step into because I'm so used to planning everything. You know what I mean? So like now, and that's just how I've tricked myself into seeing the things that bring me uncomfortable, where it's like, okay, now, damn, why did she ask me to clean the dishes? Oh, man, I gotta clean the dishes.
She know I hate this.
She know I don't want to clean the dishes. However, I know when I clean them dishes, oh, it's gonna be a good night. You feel me? Like, I just know that that's her love language. You feel me? So it's just like I'm looking for those moments where it's like, oh, this used to bring me tension, but now I see it as an opportunity to love on you, to show you a different side of intimacy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know we kind of went left and right, but that was good.
In context, it's a mental shift.
Yes.
And that's so much of what
Yes.
this conversation is.
There we go.
Men, our mental health. Even this conversation represents a mental shift.
That's good.
In how we understand manhood.
That's good.
And those are the things that we will be doing for the rest of our lives if we do it well. To your point, you talked about unlearning. Giving context to elements of our identity, recognizing where there's evolution, recognizing where there needs to be evolution.
There we go. That's good, man.
And identifying those areas to pivot. So
That's good.
I do want to land this plane with, so for our audience, recognizing, who we're talking to, I want to give them one from each of us, just a final takeaway.
Sure.
Like, if you remember one thing from the conversation, let it be this. What say you?
Man, so communication for me, I think the word communication, as a professional communicator, I value words. I value the significance of words and their landing, right? You talk about landing the plane. It's like, I understand as a communicator, even in communicating in this format, there's content that we're giving, and then there's context to it.
Yeah.
So it's important that people understand the context of why we're even having this conversation. And it is for us, in the best way possible, to effectively communicate to you that if you want to shift your mental health, your overall state of being, you're going to have to shift your mindset. You're going to have to shift your mindset from why is this happening to me to what am I supposed to learn from what's happening to me. You have to shift your perspective from I'm not good enough to what do I need to do to be good. I think oftentimes there's like this notion of like, oh no, you're not in lack. But what if you are in lack? What if you do lack certain skill sets? Like, let's normalize that. Like, let's normalize being in lack. But then let's also normalize, because I lack this skill set of effectively communicating. What am I going to do? What work am I going to commit to become a more effective communicator? What am I going to do to better understand, my spouse, but more importantly, myself? See, communication is not just about what is being said to others, but it's really about what we're saying to ourselves in these circumstances, aka circles. When you are in the circumstance, what stance are you choosing? And to me, that is what I want to leave everyone with.
I think, and a direct tie to that is something that you mentioned earlier, the idea of therapy and not being reactive about that.
Come on, talk about it. That's it.
We in our conversation and pregame, you talked about having gone to therapy at 23.
23 years old.
23 years old.
Yep.
My first time was 30, and in my community, I'm early.
Sure.
So for the young men listening, don't think that therapy, number one, is something that you do when you hit a wall.
So good.
And number two, please don't think that there's an age limit. You do not need to be 25 and up to get in this club.
There we go.
You can get therapy now, like the moment that you decide to.
There we go.
It's your choice.
That's so good.
And then the identity of it all. I think that understanding our identities beyond what we do.
Yep.
Beyond even our aspirations. Like, I wrote down something from our previous conversation, and maybe we talked about it tonight. What makes you happy? How many of us can answer that question genuinely? Like, and I'm not talking about the salary. I'm not talking about a vacation. Like, what really makes you happy? Because if you don't know that, then how can you aspire? So spending time with that idea of identity, understanding who we are, why we are, and then where we want to leave an impact on this world.
Yeah, that's good.
I really appreciate everybody for joining us tonight. I hope that something said tonight leaves a positive influence. I don't know, Jay, we about to do a part 2.
We got to.
If we get enough responses that suggest that we need a part 2, rest assured we'll make that happen.
And let us know, if there are different topics that you want, if you want us to continue to build on this topic, or if there are other topics that you want us to speak to. And maybe we might even have our wives on with us next time. Like, who knows? Like this is this isn't something that we like. This is alignment.
Yeah.
I prayed for this in my time with God. He's prayed for it, and we just had a conversation, and it was like, man, let's have this conversation. You know what I mean? So shout out to you, man, for just always prioritizing the important conversations and press and play. You know what I mean? Appreciate you, brother.
No, I appreciate the brotherhood and the partnership and ability to do this. If you enjoyed it, there will be more content coming throughout the summer, more just clips and pieces of this conversation to share. There's so much more that we've been able to discuss, so keep an eye out for that. Jeremiah, where can they find you on social?
Man, you can find me listen, there's about 1,000 Jeremiah Browns out there. So, man, if you just type in Lead Your Lane in Google, I'll pop up, because that's the only thing that's separating me from the thousands of other Jeremiah Browns. If you're on Instagram, it is at @1 Jeremiah Brown. And on LinkedIn, don't forget the E, Jeremiah E. Brown. Tap in.
I'm the same way on LinkedIn, Vincent S. Pearson. Search the Black Sports Business Academy. You'll be able to find me and the work that we're doing on Instagram, Vince_VSP. Everybody, I really appreciate the time. And until we meet again, peace.
Peace.